That's going to happen at the top of the next hour. Of course, Charles Payne will guide you through that. But the 10-year yield hit a 13-month high today, and that has tech stocks, as you can see, under some pressure. Markets are worried about inflation. Let's bring in Payne Capital Senior Wealth Advisor Courtney Dominguez and National Taxpayers Union EVP Brandon Arnold. Good to see you both. Thank you for coming in. Courtney, first to you. I'm wondering if the Fed is actually helpless to do anything about the interest rates right now, that the markets have their own mind about which the Fed has no control.
Yeah, and it's a good point you bring up, and something we've been making sure that we're talking to our clients about, because the Fed raising interest rates often will happen after the markets have already priced that in. And that is what you're starting to see. You're seeing interest rates are rising. The markets are already discounting that. And you're also starting to see here inflation is kicking up. You're seeing that in things like commodities prices. So just making sure that you're well positioned here, that if inflation continues as it seems to be, make sure that you're doing that before the Fed makes any decisions, because they're normally going to do that kind of retroactively.
And Brandon, we talked about this in the last hour, but bracket creep is something that a lot of Americans don't know what the phrase means, but it essentially means because we haven't had inflation for a couple of decades now, serious inflation. When you have inflation, as your salary gets kicked up just to keep pace with inflation, you get kicked up to a higher tax bracket. I'm wondering whether people are prepared for that.
Probably not. I think the brackets that everybody's talking about right now probably pertain to March Madness a lot more than the tax code, but that is a real problem, of course. And bracket creep isn't an issue that we've tackled for a long time, because it hasn't been a major concern with inflation being relatively low. But yeah, when you see what happens in Washington, what's happened over the past year with spending about $5.5 trillion to address this coronavirus pandemic, and it's a very real pandemic, of course, but that much money flowing into the economy, of course, is going to create some inflationary concerns, and we could be resulting in bracket creep and people facing higher taxes as a result of doing nothing but the same thing that they've been doing for years and years.
And Courtney, not just higher taxes, but completely different conceptions of taxes. I mean, we know about the wealth tax. Frankly, I think it's unconstitutional. It may not pass the muster at the Supreme Court. But you now have Janet Yellen talking about a global corporate tax. You have Bernie Sanders coming in with an income inequality tax. I don't know if you heard about that, but that's a whole new thing that might affect corporations. So there are whole new types of taxes that are being talked about.
Yeah, and right now there's really nothing substantial to make sure that you're making changes on. But I'm getting many questions about all the rumblings of tax rates going up in the future. And realistically, tax rates are very low right now compared to historical rates. So just making sure that you're doing anything you can to take advantage of the tax rates we're having. Like, for example, I might have people who are starting to get some money out of IRAs and into Roths or things like that. And there's some creative things you can be doing to just make sure that if rates go up, just take advantage of what you have right now. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's definitely getting rumored.
You know, Brandon, creative things that can be done. Those are the words of Courtney. I think that's a good way of putting it. But it also just shows that if you have a lot of money, you can find ways around taxes that the vast majority of the people in this country can't. And that's why it does fall on the middle class so often, despite their claims to want to soak the rich, right?
Yeah, that's right. We shouldn't have to get creative here, because creativity implies that we're spending too much time and energy thinking about taxes instead of the things that we'd like to think about, our families, our day-to-day jobs. So it's frustrating that that's the direction that we're moving in. And of course, the wealthy are able to do so. If we were to face a wealth tax, for instance, or some other mark-to-market scheme or things that we're hearing about from Washington, they'll be able to avoid a portion of that because they have lawyers, they have accountants, they can spend their resources on these individuals to evade a considerable amount of taxes. Everyday people, unfortunately, can't afford that. That's why we have to keep the tax rates low, not just keeping tax rates low for people making under $400,000, but hopefully keeping tax rates low for businesses and job creators and everybody.
By the way, I just want to keep with you for a second here, Brandon, because we have this issue where 21 state attorneys general have sent a letter to Treasury Secretary Yellen asking for clarification about whether or not the so-called American Rescue Plan would strip states of their rights to either increase or lower taxes. What do you make of this? And is there an answer to that?
Yeah, this is a huge problem. It's absolutely enormous because what they did was prohibit states from cutting taxes, but they did so with such broad brushstrokes that even things like, the $1.9 trillion package said that people don't have to pay taxes, federal taxes, on about $10,000 of unemployment benefits. A lot of states want to conform to that, but can they? It's not clear right now. They need guidance from Treasury. And ultimately, what we're probably going to see is a lawsuit that's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court that'll hopefully overturn this provision. But until then, people are left in absolute limbo, not knowing if their unemployment benefits are going to be taxed by the state in which they reside. It's a big problem for millions of taxpayers, needs to be resolved immediately. So hopefully Yellen can get on top of this right away.
Courtney, we just had 4 years of a president who's a businessman. And now we've got another 4. The next 4 years will be held by all these political insiders who don't know how to plan for the future the way business people have to. There's no way you can plan with all these questions in the air.
I would kind of disagree with that to a certain point. When you look at the markets and you look at businesses, they do tend to perform just as well under one administration over another. Because at the end of the day, these businesses are still going to try to make sure that they're just as profitable and running as efficient of a business, no matter what administration is in place right now. And yes, there are things that they might want to change if, for example, tax rates might be changing or something along those lines. But I think that U.S. businesses do a very good job of being efficient, kind of no matter what the scenarios are. And they do have.
Yeah, we do that. But Courtney, you have to admit it's easier to make money and to do what you're in business doing if you can make plans for the future, rather than if you don't know if there's going to be a whole new tax that you're totally unprepared for.
If the future's certain, I agree with you. It'd be so much easier. I realistically, I don't think we ever really have that clarity. I think that's really why the markets are constantly changing prices, because we don't know exactly what is going to happen in the future, and you have to go with whatever information you have. So I agree with you, but I think that is kind of always the case.
Courtney, Brandon, good to see you both. Thank you very much.